Good morning.
Good morning.
So this is our harvest and Halloween message. And I always look for something a little gloomy for us that can be lifted up. So today the message and the sharing has to do with the moral uses of dark things. Have you ever heard that title?
Yeah.
Anybody here?
Yeah.
No? Yeah. Mom did? So that was, it was a book, it was actually a series of presentations by Horace Bushnell, and that was in 1869. And when you go online, you see how old that document is, and it's quite interesting. But what I'd like to do is kind of take that thought and work it with you a little bit. I'm thinking about in the future, in future years, of having a weekly sermon creation process. Like if you come over to my house maybe in another year or two, and we sit and we create sermons together, I think that would be awesome. You know, because we'd have life experiences and ideas together. But not yet. But that's part of what we're doing here. We're kind of co-creating a message that will speak to your heart and mind, and how important it is to feed the mind with good things. Because the mind tends to think about what? Yeah, the physical mind, the ego, tends to think about dark things. And so it's important not to brush that under the carpet that I slipped on. But rather to just address it. There are dark things that we think about every day that go through our mind. And they can be things that make us depressed, things that make us angry, things that make us lose hope, things that make us think bad things about other people. And what's even more insidious are things that make us think bad things about ourselves. So I'd like to ask you, so that we can address this topic before All Hallows Eve, and then we have that beautiful All Souls Day. This is the Day of the Dead in Mexico. And that's actually a beautiful day. It's a day where we remember those who have died in honor of our family and friends. So today I have an initial question for you, which is, can you think of a real life example of a dark and shadowy event or experience that would not be of God in your perception? And I know there are many. Yes. Holocaust, thank you.
My divorce.
Yeah, absolutely. That hurt. I've been through a divorce, and it felt like it took 10 years off my life. Even though he's a very good man and we had a very decent divorce, it took 10 years. I mean, I tell you, it's not a fun thing to have a vow and to break it. It hurts, and everything with it. That's right, it is. Anything else? Human trafficking.
Having cancer.
Having cancer.
What?
Having cancer. That is a dark and shadowy thing.
Heart disease.
What?
Heart disease.
Heart disease. That's right. That's extremely scary.
Drug addiction.
Drug addiction. That is very dark and shadowy, and it has many layers to that. Yes.
Cancer.
Cancer.
Including cancer in society.
Ooh.
Right down
Yeah.
social.
Beautiful.
Customs
Cruelty to animals.
Oh.
Yeah.
Racial hatred.
Racial hatred. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Bankruptcies.
Yes.
Loss of.
That loss of your livelihood and your sense of your own self-dignity. And, you know, people lose hope with that a lot. Yep. Anyone else? How about just in general, a sense of loss of your youth and health? It feels very like a huge loss. I know that. Yes, Janine?
Depression, depressionated the
Mental
soul.
health. Yeah, depression, sort of general depression as well as chronic.
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
Abuse to children.
Oh,
Oh, no.
of all kinds.
Horrible.
Well, thank you very much. It wasn't hard to come up with that, was it?
No.
Yeah. So Swedenborg would propose that the Lord does not allow anything that can't come through with a goodness as a result. It doesn't mean that the Lord wills or allows the dark and shadowy things. I truly believe that God does not and cannot will that. But always that in our freedom, when these dark and shadowy things happen, that always good can come when we bring God into the center of that. And I'd like to ask you then also to share, if you would, briefly, an experience where you have had something dark and shadowy happen to you, and then you saw through it, maybe as you were coming through it, something very good. Yes.
It was just this last week, I had to create essentially a term paper for the scariest boss I've ever had at work. It felt like everything was on the line. In my feelings, it felt like my job was on the line, my marriage, believe it or not,
Wow.
everything. And from the time I was in college, I have this pattern of always putting it off till the last minute and then having a meltdown. And my former wife, Anna, would always have to come to the rescue a few days before and write it for me. Other than that, I was a summa cum laude 4.0 student, but there's something about writing an outline freaks me out. So that hit me this week, and so I went to God and I just said, I do not know what is going on here. This is so deep and so chronic in my whole life. I don't understand it, and so I'm giving it to you. I don't know what to do. And then the next morning, early, the outline just downloaded into my mind
Wow.
for the first time ever. And the
Beautiful.
fear was gone, and it has stayed gone.
Beautiful.
Good.
Wow. Alan.
A stroke, for two reasons. Number one, my father and grandfather both died of it, so that's an improvement. And two, it forced me to change my way of going about things, slowing down, being methodical. So that's
And I will just add to that, that I think you and I have gotten to be better friends
absolutely.
since your stroke, because I think we both realize how much we need and want each other as friends in our lives. And that's what, when we get sick, we are very clear what's important to us. Now, that doesn't mean that it's good that we get sick, but I know that when we put God in the midst of whatever trial that we're facing, that good can come of it and does come of it. And it does 100% of the time. We may not always see it, especially right away when we're scared and when we feel overwhelmed. I'd like to share with you a story I saw on the Today Show this week of a military veteran who was a medic, and one of his comrades was in trouble and stepped on a minefield and lost his leg. And the medic, knowing that he was walking into a minefield, ran to his comrade and rescued him and saved his life, but he also lost his leg from a mine in that rescue. He now says, get this, you ready for this? I'm doing as Charles Stanley. You ready? He said that was the best day of his life. Can you fathom that kind of spirit? He said because he lost his leg, because he lost his leg, he now spends his time as a retired military veteran volunteering with youth, young ones who've lost their limbs. And he now, with his prosthetic, he now leads them and inspires them to live a full and happy life. He said he had never been so happy as when he lost his leg and found a purpose through it. I've been reading Billy Graham's Nearing Home, and he has so many beautiful stories of inspiration and hope, especially as we're ending our earthly life. And one of the stories he tells is of a veteran who was a prisoner in a Japanese camp and was tortured. And at 94, he finally came around to his faith at age 94. And he now continues to witness to the goodness of God through everything that he had experienced, and all the way through his 94 years. And he inspires Billy Graham, or did, right? And so this is such a beautiful book itself. And if anybody wants to borrow it from me, you're welcome to. And so we think about the whole history of Israel We think about the history of the Israelites who went through trial after trial. And God said, I am going with you, and I will give you the land of milk and honey. And you must keep coming back to me, because you're a stiff-necked people. We're all stiff-necked people. The Israelite nation is really us. And so God is saying, when you go away and you're in exile, come back to me. And sometimes we run away thinking we can do it alone. And that's when trials and suffering and dark and shadowy things hurt the most. My concluding message to you is, there is nothing on earth that will bring comfort and peace in the midst of darkness and shadow like being in the presence of God. That presence, and this is a mystery, the presence of God, no matter what you're going through, will give you exactly what you need to get through the shadow, to get through the dark time, to get through the dark night of the soul. And it is amazing. And people will ask me, and I will say, I don't know what God will give you, but I know that when you're in the presence of that holiness, something will be communicated and shared with you, soul to soul by the divine, that will fit exactly what you need. And no one, no minister, no priest, no rabbi, no imam, no friend, no family member can tell you what the Holy of Holies will convey to you. Only God can give you that. And so I'm here to say to you, throughout history and throughout the nation of Israel's history and our history and your narrative, your story, the only thing that will get you through these dark and shadowy nights and days, if ever they come again, will be the presence of the Holy One. And that Holy One will know exactly what you need to hear, what you need to feel, what you need to hope for. Nothing else will really do it in a lasting way like the presence. Have hope. Have heart. Don't give up. Be in the presence. Amen.
Amen.